morning, fourth graders. How are you guys today? We are going to be on pages 18 and 19 today. We'll be covering punctuation and we'll begin a series on commas. There are several rules for commas that we must learn. So we will be working on rule number 1 today. And also, there was kind of a mix-up with pages 15, 16, and 17. I think not everybody understood the directions. It wasn't very clear. So I didn't count points against anyone. I did look over what was submitted. However, I did not grade those, and that is perfectly fine. We're going to go ahead and move forward. If there was any serious thing that I found, misunderstandings or whatever as far as the activity, I would have reached out to you already, so you wouldn't know where you are with that. All right, so let's begin today's lesson. We're going to be talking about punctuation first and foremost. So abbreviations and end marks is what we're talking about today. So we know that for a declarative sentence, it makes a statement and it should always end with a period. We know that an interrogative sentence is a question and it should end with a question mark. We also know that either a request or a command, something being told to do or asked to do, these are imperative sentences. They should also end with a period. And exclamatory sentences, something that exclaims or something that is shown with strong feeling, should be followed by an exclamation point. So initials and abbreviations are followed by periods. Okay, so we're going to demonstrate that today. So think A says on page 18, to add end marks and periods for abbreviations in the following sentences. Well, I put 3 of those sentences on the board. We have sentence 1, sentence 4, and sentence 7 that I'll do for you, and you can do the rest. Just as good practice, I will send a copy of the answers to you on the assignment tab on tomorrow. And we're going to go ahead and begin with number 1. So it says the tadpole will soon become a frog. Well, there's nothing in the sentence so far that needs any abbreviations. There's no shortened words. But we come to the end of the sentence and we see there is no punctuation. Remember the definition of a sentence, a group of words that expresses a complete thought. This is a group of words that expresses a complete thought, but then the next rule to sentence is that it begins with a capital letter. Anytime you see me put 3 underlines under a word in your work, it means that that letter should be capitalized. So when you see that a lot in writing. It should be capitalized if you see 3 underlines. And the next rule to sentences is that it should end with a punctuation mark. In this scenario, it's a period, okay? This is just a declarative sentence. It makes a statement that the tadpole will soon become a frog. It's not asking a question. It's not asking someone to do something. And it's nothing exciting. It's just a statement, okay? So sentence number 4 says, Mr. J.R. Patterson ordered 4 gallons of ice cream for the party on October 15th. Well, we know that when we have titles that are shortened, like Mr. instead of M-I-S-T-E-R, we have the abbreviation Mr. So we want to put a period behind that abbreviation, okay? And the same thing when we're using initials. Excuse me. So a lot of times you'll see me put my 3 initials all together at the end of statements when I'm replying to you. That's not really following the order of rules. That's just my end statement signature that I utilize. But when you're writing, like for my name, Jennifer Marie Harvey, I would usually put a J, Jennifer, period, Marie, period, and then spell out my last name, okay? Same scenario with Mr. J.R. Patterson. You want to put a period after the J because J is an initial. You put a period after the R because R is also an initial. And then Patterson ordered 4 gallons. Notice we have the word gallons here, but it's not abbreviated. We don't need a period there. And then at the end of the sentence, we have 15. Normally, if we have a year like 2020 here, the period would go here and the comma would go there. But when a sentence ends with a date, a number, then you just add the period there, okay? Because this is the end of the sentence, is the end of the statement, okay? And so that's how number 4 should look. So when we move to number 7, now we have an example of other abbreviations. So the recipe calls for 2 ounces of chocolate and 1/4 teaspoon of salt. So we're talking about recipes, we're talking about measurements, and we see that ounces here is abbreviated. There's OZ, so we put a period after ounces because that's abbreviation. And then after teaspoon, TSP, you would put a period here because this is also an abbreviation. Well, I just gave you one of the abbreviations here for ounce, right? So we know that ounce is OZ, period. Don't forget the period. Don't lose points on your quiz or test for forgetting to put your period. And then, of course, at the end of sentence 7, the recipe calls for 2 ounces of chocolate and 1/4 teaspoon of salt. At the end of every sentence, we must have an end mark, a punctuation, which in this case is a period, okay? So we're going to move down to think B real quickly. Go ahead and finish all of think A. I'll send you the answers later. But think B asks us to abbreviate each one of these items. Excuse me. So for inch, we know that inch is abbreviated IN period. Okay, that's the abbreviation for inch. I realize I usually have my students complete this portion, but I realize that not everyone has been introduced to abbreviations, so we're going to go ahead and walk through them, okay? So the abbreviation for foot is FT, period. Yard, YD, period. Gallon, which we saw here, would be GAL, period. Pint is PT, period. Quart is QT, period. Dozen is DOZ, period. Pound is a little bit different. Pound does not really come from an American or English type word. It comes from another derivative, so another background. I believe it's Latin, if I'm not mistaken. And it comes LB, period. So this one, you're going to see it's way different than all the rest. It doesn't even follow any of the letters in its own spelling. And so this is how we abbreviate pound, okay? We'll talk a little bit more about that derivative later. And then week, when we abbreviate week, it's WK, period. And then we found that OZ was already abbreviated for us there. And so here it is, okay? So these are all of our abbreviations that we'll use for different measurements here. So let's move on to commas. Okay, we're going to move on to commas real quick. I am going to erase all this information so that we can move on for an example. So the rule, number 1 rule for commas in the blue box at the top of page 19 says, use commas to separate 3 or more items written in a series. So a series is kind of like a group of words, 3 or more similar words that you use together, right? It's written one after another. For example, it says, I'm going to erase these first 3 sentences, just in case you guys still need some of the examples at the bottom. Okay, so it says Lucy planted pansies, sweet peas, and sunflowers. In her flower garden, right? So, we're talking about what all did she plant in her flower garden? How many things, right? She planted pansies, that's one thing. Sweet peas, That's one thing. And sunflowers. Don't get confused because sweet peas is 2 words. It's still just one thing. Okay, so pay attention to that when you're reading your sentences. If you have 2 words, that's only one thing. It's still just counted as one item. So she has pansies, she has sweet peas, and she has sunflowers. Okay, so we will put a comma after pansies, a comma after sweet peas, and that's it. Remember, you don't put a comma before the first one, and you do not put a comma after the last one, okay? It's only the ones in between. And if it was only 2 things, if she had only planted sweet peas and sunflowers, you would not need a comma, okay? If it's only 2 things, you just use the word and, okay? Sweet peas and sunflowers. But since it's 3 things, we do need commas to separate them. Pansies, comma, sweet peas, comma, and sunflowers. Okay? And so another example is there for you in that blue box. The cat ran into the room, jumped onto the chair, and began to purr softly. So this is a different kind of series. It's not just 3 items. It's 3 phrases of things that the cat did. So what all did the cat do? First, the cat ran into the room. That's one thing the cat did. The next thing the cat did was jumped onto the chair. So that's the second thing he did. And then the third thing is began to purr softly. So there's 3 groups of words that describe what the cat is doing, okay? These are called phrases. And so you would put a phrase after ran into the room, comma, jumped onto the chair, comma, and began to purr softly, period, okay? So do not use comma before the first item or after the last item in the series. We don't put a comma here. We don't put a comma there, okay? Pay attention to that. So what I want you to do is think A, complete that exercise, and I will send you the answers on tomorrow along with page 18 so that you can check to see what you missed, if you have it correct or not. And if you have any questions, guys, feel free to let me know. You have a blessed day.